If you start your day with a hot cup of coffee, you might never have imagined that this simple and comforting routine has its roots in one of the most significant military conflicts of the 17th century. But what if I told you that coffee did not become popular in Europe through peaceful trade or cultural curiosity, but rather as an unexpected spoil of war? It may seem hard to believe, but the story of how coffee took Europe by storm begins on a battlefield. In the year 1683, the mighty Ottoman Empire launched a massive military campaign aimed directly at Vienna, the capital city of the Holy Roman Empire and one of the most important strongholds of Christian Europe at the time. The stakes could not have been higher. The Ottomans, under the rule of Sultan Mehmed IV, sent a colossal army led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa. Their goal was not just to capture the city, but to establish a foothold in Central Europe, which could potentially lead to the domination of much of the continent. The city of Vienna, ruled by Emperor Leopold I, was not adequately prepared for such a formidable siege. Supplies were limited, fortifications were vulnerable in certain areas, and morale among the population was shaky. Many within the city and beyond believed that Vienna's fall was inevitable, a matter of time rather than chance. The siege officially began in July of that year. The Ottoman forces employed brutal and effective tactics designed to wear down the city's defenses. They dug extensive tunnels beneath the massive stone walls with the intention of placing explosives to create breaches. They also blocked vital supply routes, cutting Vienna off from food and resources. Starvation and disease began to spread among the city's residents and defenders. And desperation grew with each passing day. Yet, as often happens in history, an unlikely alliance would change the course of events. Vienna's salvation came from the Kingdom of Poland. King John III Sobieski, a seasoned military leader and a devout Catholic, led a coalition army of over 80,000 troops, composed of Polish, Austrian, and German forces. Together, they formed the Holy League, a defensive pact aimed at stopping the Ottoman advance into Europe. On September 12, 1683, the decisive Battle of Kohlenberg took place just outside Vienna. The Christian coalition launched a surprise counterattack that culminated in what is still considered the largest cavalry charge in recorded history. More than 20,000 horsemen, with Sobieski himself at the front, surged down the hills toward the Ottoman lines like a tidal wave of steel and fury. The sheer power and speed of this charge shattered the Ottoman ranks. In a matter of hours, what had seemed to be an unstoppable siege collapsed completely. The Ottoman troops fled in panic, abandoning their weapons, supplies, and tents. This victory was not just a pivotal moment in European military history. It marked the beginning of the decline of Ottoman influence in Central Europe, shifting the balance of power for generations to come. But among the various items left behind in the Ottoman camp's gold, weapons, silk there, was something much more mysterious to the Viennese. Dozens of large sacks filled with small, dark, aromatic beans were found, something most locals had never seen before. At first, the Viennese had no clue what these beans were. Some speculated they were camel feed brought by the Ottoman forces, while others thought they might be some sort of exotic food or medicinal ingredient. The unusual smell intrigued them, but nobody knew what to do with the strange little beans. There was, however, one man who immediately recognized them. His name was Jerzy Franciszek Kolczycki, a Polish merchant, diplomat, and former soldier who had spent years living among the Ottomans while working as a spy. Fluent in Turkish and familiar with Ottoman culture, Kolczycki understood exactly what these mysterious beans were. They were coffee beans, a staple in Ottoman society and an integral part of daily life in the Islamic world. But still relatively unknown in Christian Europe, Kolczycki saw an opportunity that few others could envision. He petitioned the local authorities to allow him to take possession of the abandoned sacks of coffee beans. Using the knowledge he had gained during his time in the East, he began preparing the beans the way he had seen the Ottomans do. He roasted them carefully to release their oils and rich aroma, then ground them into fine powder and brewed them in hot water. The result was a dark, bitter liquid black coffee. However, the strong and somewhat harsh flavor did not appeal to the Viennese, who were more accustomed to sweet beverages. Kolczycki quickly adapted the recipe, adding sugar and milk to soften the taste. This simple yet transformative change gave birth to what is now known as Viennese coffee. Recognizing the potential of this new beverage, Kolczycki opened Vienna's first coffee house, named Zerblauen Flash, which translates to the blue bottle. It was an instant success among the city's merchants, aristocrats, and intellectuals. What had started as an unfamiliar spoil of war quickly turned into a fashionable drink that symbolized modernity, sophistication, and cultural refinement. The success of coffee in Vienna sparked a movement that would spread far beyond the borders of Austria. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, coffee houses were popping up in major European cities, including London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Venice. But these establishments were far more than just places to enjoy a cup of coffee. They became centers of intellectual exchange, political debate, and social interaction. In London, coffee houses earned the nickname penny universities because, for the price of a single penny, anyone could gain entry and participate in discussions about politics, economics, science, and philosophy. It was not uncommon to find great minds like Isaac Newton, Samuel Pepys, and other scholars exchanging ideas over a cup of coffee. These gatherings were crucial in fostering the intellectual environment that would later contribute to the Enlightenment and the rise of modern science. In France, coffee houses became hotbeds for revolutionary thinking. Writers, philosophers, and political activists like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Diderot gathered to debate ideas that would eventually fuel the French Revolution. These conversations planted the seeds for movements advocating freedom, equality, and democracy. Unlike taverns and alehouses, which were associated with heavy drinking and sometimes rowdy behavior, coffee houses provided a more sober, civilized atmosphere where clear thought and meaningful conversation could flourish. This shift in social behavior was one of the subtle but profound ways that coffee began to shape European culture. Coffee also had an unexpected impact on work habits and productivity. Before the widespread consumption of coffee, it was common for people to drink low-alcohol beverages throughout the day because water was often unsafe. Alcohol, while safer than contaminated water, did little to improve productivity. Coffee, with its stimulating effects, provided a much-needed boost in alertness and mental clarity. Historians argue that the rise of coffee consumption contributed significantly to the work culture that emerged during the Industrial Revolution, supporting longer and more focused workdays in both factories and offices. As the centuries progressed, coffee evolved from being a luxury enjoyed by the elite to a common beverage accessible to all levels of society. During the Industrial Revolution, coffee became a staple not only for the wealthy, but also for the working class, who relied on its energizing properties to get through grueling shifts. Simultaneously, the cultivation and trade of coffee expanded on a global scale. By the 19th century, Brazil had become the world's largest coffee producer, a title it still holds today. Vast coffee plantations, powered by labor often under harsh conditions, supplied an insatiable global demand. Other countries like Colombia, Ethiopia, and later Vietnam also became major players in the coffee trade, further embedding coffee into the fabric of global commerce. In Italy, coffee culture reached a new level with the invention of espresso. This strong, concentrated form of coffee became a national symbol, served quickly in small cups to busy workers and thoughtful poets alike. In Vienna, coffee houses maintained their tradition of elegance and culture. Frequented by legendary composers like Mozart and Beethoven, who found inspiration amid the hum of conversation and the clink of porcelain cups. By the 20th century, coffee culture began to globalize in new ways. The rise of international coffee chains like Starbucks transformed the coffee house into a modern, accessible space where anyone could grab a cup of coffee, work on a laptop, or meet friends. What began in the opulent of Europe now flourished in bustling urban centers around the world, from New York to Tokyo. Even today, coffee continues to evolve. Modern trends like cold brew, nitro coffee, and artisan pour-over methods reflect how coffee culture constantly reinvents itself while honoring its deep historical roots. Coffee festivals, international barista competitions, and specialty coffee movements highlight just how far this beverage has come. Remarkably, all of this traces back to a singular historical event, the Siege of Vienna. What was left behind by the fleeing Ottoman army was far more than sacks of beans. It was the seed of a cultural revolution, one that would ripple through centuries and continents, influencing not just what people drink, but how they live, work, socialize, and think. The story of coffee reminds us that history is full of unexpected consequences. What started as a military conflict had ramifications that extended far beyond borders and battlefields. Coffee, once an exotic curiosity, became a symbol of modernity, creativity, and human connection. Today, when you hold a warm cup of coffee in your hands, you are participating in a tradition that spans continents and centuries. You are connecting with the legacy of merchants, intellectuals, revolutionaries, and everyday workers who all found meaning, energy, and comfort in this humble beverage. The Siege of Vienna teaches us a profound lesson about transformation. Sometimes the most lasting impacts of history do not come from conquest or destruction, but from the simple, unexpected treasures left behind, treasures that have the power to change the world one cup at a time.